She was last seen thumbing a ride under the endless gray sky. Her name was Tamara, 17 years old. She never made a home. This wasn't the first time. It wouldn't be the last. This road, Highway 16, winds through some of the most breathtaking wilderness in British Columbia. But for dozens of women, it's the last place they were ever seen. Alive, locals call it the Highway of Tears, a name born from sorrow and stained by something far darker. Because here, something or someone is preying on women. Mostly Indigenous, mostly young, all vulnerable. They vanish without a sound. Their names barely whispered beyond their families. Their cases mostly ignored. It's not just one woman, or two, or even 10. Over 80 women have disappeared or been found murdered along this lonely stretch of road since 1969. Yet the silence is deafening. The justice, absent, and the danger, still there. This isn't just a story about missing persons. It's a story about systemic failure, generational pain, and a haunting question. Who is hunting women along the Highway of Tears? Cut TO, a cold, misty stretch of Highway 16, a single pair of shoes lies abandoned by the shoulder. Highway 16 runs from Prince Rupert to Prince George, nearly 725 kilometers of open road. Small towns, logging routes, vast wilderness, and long, empty distances between safety and isolation. To outsiders, it's just a route through the mountains. But for families in northern British Columbia, it's a corridor of trauma. A graveyard without markers, a mystery without end. Seen the night Tamara disappeared. Recreated dramatic visuals. Tamara Chipman, 17, Indigenous, mother to a young child. She was walking east from Prince Rupert. The sun had just dipped behind the Treeline. She was trying to hitchhike to work. She never arrived. Witnesses remember seeing her at the edge of the road. Arm out, thumb raised, and then nothing. No phone call, no sightings, no body. That was 2005. Her family reported her missing days later. The police shrugged. She's probably just out partying, they said. But Tamara never partied. She never left her son. And she never came back. The common thread. Tamara wasn't the only one. Aileen, Ramona, Roxanne, Nicole, Alberta, Delphine, Immaculate, Jessica. Different years, different towns. But the same thread runs through all their stories. Indigenous women, hitchhiking, vanishing without a trace, a chilling lack of urgency from police. And then the patterns emerge. Some found murdered in ditches. Some never found at all. Some cases closed without cause. Others never opened. For decades, families begged for answers. Their cries were met with silence. Or worse, indifference. She's probably out drinking. She'll come back. She's a runaway. But these women were daughters, mothers, sisters, real people. And someone or something is hunting them. An ominous pattern. Highway 16 is beautiful, but it's deadly. It cuts through remote areas where public transportation is nearly non-existent. For many women, especially those from First Nations reserves, hitchhiking is the only option to get to work, school, or medical appointments. And predators know it. They watch. They wait. They offer rides. And the women disappear. Some say it's the work of a serial killer. Others say it's multiple killers over decades. Still others believe it's a mix: serial predators, truckers, opportunists. But the question remains, why has no one stopped it? Ignored for too long. For years, this wasn't even considered a crisis. The missing women were blamed, their lives devalued, their families dismissed. One woman went missing, then another, and still nothing. Not until media coverage picked up in the mid-2000s did the wider public even know what was happening. By then, dozens were already gone. Cue solemn music, pan across memorial crosses by the roadside, each one bearing a name, a photo, a date. Each cross on this highway is a question mark. Each name, a haunting whisper in the wind. Each missing woman, a life stolen. This is not just a string of tragedies. It is an epidemic. And tonight, we're pulling back the curtain. We're diving into the missing reports, the murder files, the ignored warnings, and the broken systems that let this happen. Because one thing is certain, something is very wrong on the Highway of Tears. Highway 16 is both breathtaking and terrifying. Mountains loom, trees stretch for miles, civilization is rare, danger is not. This is northern British Columbia. Beautiful, isolated, forgotten. For tourists, it's the scenic route. For locals, it's a lifeline. But for Indigenous families, it's a hunting ground and a memorial. This stretch, from Prince Rupert to Prince George, is now known worldwide as the Highway of Tears. But the tears didn't start in the 2000s. They go back further, much further. The first known case, 1970. A 26-year-old woman named Gloria Moody was last seen leaving a bar in Williams Lake. The next morning, her body was found in the woods. She had been beaten and sexually assaulted. Her killer was never found. That was the first documented case. But it wouldn't be the last. Over the next 50 years, more than 80 women would go missing or be found murdered along this corridor and in the surrounding region. Some say the true number is much higher, that many cases were never recorded or never taken seriously. The disappearances stretch across decades, each one like a ghost, and with every year more crosses line the highway. These aren't isolated incidents. They form a grim pattern, a timeline of tragedy that paints a picture no one wanted to see. Timeline of tragedy highlights 1970 Gloria Moody found dead. Case unsolved. 1974 Monica Ignaz, 15, last seen near Thornhill. Her body found weeks later. 1989 Delphine Nichol, 16, vanished while hitchhiking. Still missing. 1990 Ramona Wilson, 16, went missing in Smithers. Her remains found a year later. 1994 Roxanne Thiara, 15, found murdered near Burns Lake. 1995 Alberta Williams, 24, found strangled near Prince Rupert. 2005 Tamara Chipman, 22, disappears. Never found. 2010 Loren Leslie, 15, found murdered near Highway 27. Same route, same profile, same silence. The victim profile. There's a disturbing consistency in the victims. Young women, primarily Indigenous, often hitchhiking, living in poverty or on the margins, traveling for work, school, or to visit family. They disappear in the gaps between towns, between services, between systems that should protect them. They are targeted because predators know no one is watching, no one is coming, and no one will listen. Why hitchhiking? It's easy to say, don't hitchhike. But for many Indigenous women living in remote communities, there's no other option. There's no regular bus service, no safe public transport, no car, no ride. You walk or you stick your thumb out. And when you do, you take a chance. Will the person who picks you up take you to town? Or will they take you into the woods? For decades, the RCMP knew women were disappearing. They had maps, case files, lists of names, but they didn't act. Not until the media started paying attention, not until the pressure became unbearable. By then, it was already too late for dozens. The official project. In 2005, the RCMP finally launched Project Ipana. Its purpose? To investigate a series of unsolved murders and disappearances along the Highway of Tears and beyond. It started with 9 cases, then 18, eventually 40. But even this wasn't the full picture. Project Ipana was limited in scope. To qualify, a case had to meet very specific criteria. Victim must be female, involved in a high-risk activity like hitchhiking or sex work. Disappearance or murder must be near highways 16, 97, or 5. That meant dozens of cases were left out. It was like drawing a border around a tragedy, saying, these victims matter, and these ones don't. Even with millions in funding, Project Ipana has only solved a handful of cases. Families still wait, still hope, still cry out. And the highway? It stays quiet, but it never forgets. Cut to drone footage. A lone woman walking along the shoulder of Highway 16 The wind howling, trees towering above her. Every woman who walks this road does. So, with a shadow, a memory, a risk, and every town it passes carries the same question. Who is next? A stolen future. Each victim had dreams. Gloria wanted to start her own business. Delphine was going to finish high school. Ramona wanted to be a teacher. Tamara was raising a son. But their futures were stolen. Their names mostly forgotten. Their cases mostly cold. Unless we tell their stories. Unless we demand answers. Because the highway of tears isn't just a road. It's a scar. And it runs deep. Every story has a beginning. And in this case, it began long before the media noticed. Before the RCMP acted. Before the world cared. The first known name etched into the darkness of a highway of tears is Gloria Moody. But was she really the first? Or just the first the system bothered to remember? Gloria Moody, 1970. She was 26, a young Indigenous mother of 2, from the Bella Coola Band. On October 25, 1970, Gloria went out for the evening in Williams Lake. She walked out of a bar, alone. The next morning, hunters found her body dumped in the woods. She had been brutally beaten, sexually assaulted, left to die beneath the trees. The RCMP investigated, briefly, but no one was arrested. No suspects were named. The case went cold, and just like that, the silence began. Gloria's death should have set off alarms. A young woman, murdered, dumped in the forest, a killer roaming free. Instead, her death was buried. Just another statistic, just another Native woman. No press conference, no national outcry, just whispers and grief, the forgotten ones. After Gloria came others. Monica Ignaz, age 15, disappeared in 1974 from Thornhill. Her body found weeks later. Maureen Mosey, 33, found murdered near Salmon Arm in 1981. Shelley Nero, vanished in the mid-80s. Never found, but their names barely made it past the obituaries. No one connected the dots. No one saw the pattern. Or, if they did, they looked the other way. The truth? These women weren't invisible. They were ignored. Because they were Indigenous. Because they were poor. Because they didn't fit the narrative. And because in Canada at the time, missing Native women weren't seen as victims. They were seen as statistics, disposable. Delphine Nykel, 1990. It's June. Delphine Nykel, 16, hitchhikes from Smithers to Telkwa. A short trip. She never makes it. She's last seen alive near Highway 16. Her family files a missing person report. They're met with indifference. She probably ran away. She'll be back. Weeks pass, then months, then years. She's never found. No clues, no suspect, no closure. Delphine's disappearance shook her community. But outside the small Indigenous circles, nothing. The media didn't run stories. The police didn't issue alerts. The public didn't notice. She vanished into silence. And she wasn't alone. Ramona Wilson, 1994. Just 4 years later. Same region. Same story. Ramona Wilson, 16. From Smithers. She tells her mother she's going to a graduation party. She never arrives. Her mom files a report. The police wait. Then stall. Then suggest maybe she ran away. 10 months later, her remains are found in a wooded area near the airport. Her shoes placed neatly beside her body. A deliberate gesture. A sign. And maybe a taunt. Ramona's case should have been national news. A teenager. Murdered. Dumped. Instead, it faded. No suspect. No answers. No justice. Just another cross. Another name on the highway. The pattern emerges. By the late 1990s, families began to connect the dots themselves. Same road. Same victim profile. Same eerie circumstances. Same silence. But still no task force. No investigative pressure. No urgency. If these had been white girls from big cities, would the response have been different? That's what the families asked, and that's what the rest of Canada began to wonder. Because by the early 2000s, it wasn't just 1 or 2 stories. It was a growing list of names, each one missing, each one leaving behind a trail of grief. And behind them, a system that failed over and over again. Footage of grieving mothers holding photos. Slow pans over weathered missing posters stapled to telephone poles. These weren't just disappearances. They were disappearances ignored. By police, by politicians, by the media, until the list grew too long to ignore. Until the public started asking, why are so many women vanishing along one stretch of road? Cut to eerie, fog-drenched highway at dusk. Headlights pass. Silence returns. By the time the term Highway of Tears was born, many of these women had already been gone for decades. But finally, someone was listening, or so it seemed. For years, each case was treated like an isolated tragedy. A girl gone missing, a woman found dead, and then nothing. But when the families gathered, something changed. One mother showed another her daughter's photo, then another spoke up. Soon, they realized the unthinkable. They weren't alone. They were part of a chain, one long, unbroken line of loss. And every link traced back to the same highway. Too many to be coincidence. Gloria, Monica, Ramona, Delphine, Tamara, Alberta, Roxanne, dozens of women, all young, most indigenous, all vanished or murdered along Highway 16 or nearby routes. The similarities were impossible to ignore. Each case had a remote location, a vulnerable victim, little or no follow-up by police, no national attention. It was a systematic pattern, not just in who was being targeted, but in how little was done about it. The birth of a name. By the early 2000s, the public finally gave the crisis a name. The Highway of Tears. The term wasn't born from headlines. It came from grief, from the mothers, the sisters, the friends. It echoed the pain they carried, and the blood that stained that stretch of road. With a name came awareness. With awareness came pressure. And with pressure came long overdue action. The map that changed everything. In 2006, a chilling map was published. It marked each known case along Highway 16. Red pins stabbed into the route like wounds. There were so many pins. Too many. Communities began to ask the obvious. Why hadn't anyone done this before? Why wasn't there a task force? A national inquiry? An emergency response? Because when the faces were white, things moved fast. But here, these were Indigenous girls, and they were forgotten. Families demand action. Protests erupted in Prince George, in Smithers, in Terrace. Mothers carried signs. Where is my daughter? Justice for the missing. No more stolen sisters. They marched with tears and fists, not for headlines, but for answers. They didn't want sympathy. They wanted investigations, arrests, accountability, but what they got was silence. Still, enter Project EPANA. In 2005, after mounting pressure, the RCMP launched a task force. They called it Project EPANA. Its mission, to investigate unsolved murders and disappearances of women, mostly Indigenous, along Highways 16, 97, and 5. The criteria were strict. The victim had to be female, engaged in high-risk behavior like hitchhiking, disappeared or was found near the 3 highways. At first, they focused on 9 cases, then expanded to 18, eventually to 40. But that wasn't the full number. Many women were left out of the count. Why? Because their cases didn't fit. Wrong location, wrong lifestyle, wrong file. Their stories were lost in red tape. Even in justice, the pattern continued. Some lives counted, others didn't. Serial killer? Or something worse? As Project EPANA unfolded, a theory emerged. Was there a serial killer operating on Highway 16? Or was it worse? Was it multiple killers over decades? Was it a network of predators taking advantage of isolation and lawlessness? Some investigators believe truckers were involved. Others suggested local opportunists. Some even feared it was more organized than anyone wanted to admit. But no clear profile ever emerged. No one was caught. Only more women disappeared. In truth, the Highway of Tears wasn't the hunting ground of just one monster. It was a perfect storm. Vulnerable women, remote locations, Broken systems, a society that looked away, and in that darkness, many predators thrived. A moment of hope quickly lost. For a brief moment, there was momentum. EPANA received funding. Cases were reopened. Families were contacted. But then, the funding was slashed. From millions to barely enough for gas. Officers were reassigned. Investigations stalled. The message was clear. We looked. We tried. That's enough. But for the families, it would never be enough. Cut TO. A mother at a vigil holding a candle in the rain. A photo of her daughter pinned to her chest. They still gather. Still light candles. Still march. Because a pattern doesn't go away when you stop looking. It just gets harder to see. And along the highway of tears, the darkness never left. There's a shadow on Highway 16. It doesn't have a name. Or a face. But it has taken dozens of lives. And somewhere out there is someone who knows the truth. Or worse, someone who's still hunting. One killer? Or many? The first question investigators asked, is this the work of a serial killer? But almost immediately, the answer became complicated. Some cases had different MOs, different styles of killing. Some victims were found. Others vanished without a trace. Some were teenagers, others young mothers. It didn't line up. There wasn't one monster. There were many. What if the highway itself was the perfect predator? A long, isolated stretch, no surveillance, few witnesses, and vulnerable women forced to rely on strangers. In that kind of place, anyone could be a killer and get away with it. The truck driver theory. For years, one theory dominated the conversation. Long-haul truckers. They traveled the route regularly. They knew the terrain. They could pick someone up in one town and be gone by the next sunrise. One RCMP officer said, if you wanted to disappear someone, this is the highway you'd use. Several victims were last seen hitchhiking near truck stops. Others were found near remote pullouts or logging roads. All places only locals or truckers would know. But there was no solid evidence. No confessions. No DNA. Only suspicion. The case of Cody Leijbokoff. Then in 2010, there was a breakthrough. A young man, Cody Leijbokoff, was pulled over near Fort St. James. He was just 20 years old. Clean cut. Quiet. Not your typical serial killer. But in his truck, police found blood. Later, they discovered the body of Loren Leslie, a 15-year-old girl, dumped nearby. Further investigation linked him to 3 more murders. He was convicted, sentenced to life in prison. It was a win, but it raised more questions than answers. Because Cody wasn't a long-haul trucker. He wasn't a drifter. He was a local. Someone raised in the same towns as his victims. If Cody could do this and go unnoticed, how many others like him are out there? How many small-town predators have used the isolation of northern BC as a weapon? The answer is terrifying, because it means it isn't just strangers passing through. It's the neighbor, the co-worker, the guy at the gas station, and no one is watching. Alberta Williams and the Police Insider. In 1989, Alberta Williams, 24, disappeared after a night out in Prince Rupert. Weeks later, her body was found near the Skeena River. Strangled. Dumped. The case went cold. Then, decades later, a retired RCMP officer named Gary Kerr came forward. He revealed something shocking. We had a prime suspect. We interviewed him. But the case was never followed up. He even named the suspect publicly in a CBC podcast. A man Alberta knew. A man still alive. The suspect denied everything. No charges were ever laid. Why wasn't the case pursued? Why was it shelved for 25 years? Was it incompetence or something darker? Because when police are part of the silence, who do families turn to? The culture of silence. The families began to suspect a deeper rot. That predators weren't just getting away with murder, they were being protected by a system that didn't care. Time and again, missing person reports weren't filed in time. Crime scenes weren't secured. Key evidence was lost. Leads weren't followed. Some families even accused individual RCMP officers of being suspects themselves. One Indigenous advocate said, "If you report your daughter missing and the person who hurt her wears a badge, what hope do you have?" A predator's playground. The more investigators looked, the more they realized the Highway of Tears isn't just a crime scene. It's a predator's playground. It offers privacy, distance, victims who often don't have phones, cars, or people looking for them quickly. In many cases, the women disappeared between towns that are hundreds of kilometers apart. And once someone's missing, the terrain is brutal. Thick forests, rivers, mountains, endless logging roads. A body could vanish. A vehicle could disappear. A killer could hide in plain sight. The question isn't who did this. It's how many. How many killers walk this road? How many still do? And how many times will they get away with it? Cut to a drone shot rising slowly over Highway 16. The road twists into the horizon. Clouds drift low over the trees. In the shadows of the pines, someone once waited. And perhaps they still are. The road is long. And for many families, the journey for justice feels endless. They've buried daughters, lit candles for sisters, marched for mothers, and still they wait for answers, for truth, for anyone to care. A movement is born. The silence became too heavy, too cruel. So, the families decided to break it. They formed support groups. They organized rallies. They called press conferences. The signs read, "We will not be silent. Justice for our girls. Our lives matter." But behind the slogans were broken hearts and burning determination. Red dresses in the wind. In 2010, an art project changed everything. Red dresses began appearing, hanging from trees, billowing on highways, suspended from street poles. Each dress represented a missing or murdered Indigenous woman. No faces, no voices, just the fabric. Empty, haunting, demanding to be seen. The red dresses became a symbol of absence, of violence, of a country's shame. They were a visual scream, a protest you couldn't ignore, confronting the government. Families didn't just mourn. They fought. They pushed for policy. They met with ministers. They sat in cold buildings under fluorescent lights and told strangers their trauma. Over and over and over again. Many were dismissed. Some were mocked. But they kept going, because silence meant death. And they weren't losing any more daughters. The National Inquiry. After years of pressure, in 2016, the Canadian government finally responded. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau announced the launch of the National Inquiry into Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women and Girls. A major moment, a promise of answers, a chance at justice. But what followed was heartbreak. The inquiry was plagued with issues, leadership resignations, delays, criticism from families, poor communication, limited police cooperation. The same people who had begged for the truth now felt betrayed again. Imagine opening your wounds to a system only to watch that system look away again. Some families walked out. Others stayed, desperate for change, because broken as it was, this was all they had. A final report and a strong word. In 2019, the National Inquiry released its final report. It was massive, thousands of pages, dozens of recommendations. But one word made headlines: genocide. The report declared that the violence against Indigenous women in Canada wasn't random. It was systemic, deliberate, decades in the making. It wasn't just neglect. It was destruction sanctioned by silence, reactions and resistance. Some praised the report. Others denied its conclusion. How can this be genocide? Critics asked. There's no war, no camps. But Indigenous women fired back. You don't need bombs to erase us. Just ignore our deaths long enough. The truth cut deep, and still, the promises continued. More funding, more programs, more change. But on the ground, the families still waited, because reports don't bring daughters home, and headlines don't solve murders. Grassroots warriors. While governments debated, the people moved. Women patrolled highways. They offered rides to girls walking alone. They created safe houses, built databases, held vigils. They turned grief into action. And they weren't waiting anymore. These weren't politicians. They were aunties, sisters, grandmothers, and they were doing what the system never did, protecting their own. Tamara's sister, a voice that echoes. Tamara Chipman disappeared in 2005. She was 22, an Indigenous mother. Last seen hitchhiking near Prince Rupert. She vanished. No one was arrested. No body was found. But her sister didn't stop fighting. She became an advocate, a speaker, a name people remembered. At one protest, she said, "We are not going to disappear with our daughters. We will scream until this country listens." The youth rise up. A new generation of Indigenous activists emerged, organizing social media campaigns, hosting community safety workshops, pushing for curriculum change in schools, documenting missing cases themselves. They refused to inherit silence. They chose to inherit the fight. They turned pain into protest, grief into grit. Montage, marches, red dresses, candlelight vigils, young women holding signs, helicopter shots of the highway stretching to the horizon. The highway of tears is still quiet, but it's no longer silent, because now the world is listening. Mother, they told me my daughter probably ran away. I told them she wasn't that kind of girl. They shrugged and went back to their desks. What happens when justice looks the other way? When the people who are supposed to protect you don't? When the killers vanish into the night and the police vanish with the truth? This is where the system stands. On trial, under fire, exposed, a history of disregard. For decades, the Canadian justice system failed Indigenous women. Not once, not twice, but repeatedly. Victims weren't taken seriously. Families were dismissed. Investigations were sloppy or never opened at all. Some officers even joked that the girls probably got drunk and wandered off. These weren't just errors. They were choices. Systemic, repeated, deliberate, and for every mistake made, a killer walked free. The vanishing files. In several cases, key documents went missing. Witness statements lost. Evidence unprocessed. Timelines muddled. Autopsies botched. One family asked to see their daughter's file. The box they received? Empty. Another mother begged the RCMP to search a river. They refused. Said it was too expensive. Her daughter's body was found there months later by volunteers. At-risk labels, a dangerous bias. Victims were often labeled as high risk, transient, drug users, sex workers. These labels meant less attention, less urgency, less effort. But many weren't sex workers or addicts. They were just poor, Indigenous, without a car, walking home. And somehow, that meant they mattered less. RCMP under fire. Several RCMP divisions along the Highway of Tears corridor came under direct scrutiny. Officers were accused of failing to file missing reports in time, misclassifying murders as suicides, ignoring Indigenous family complaints, mocking victims in internal emails. There were even whispers, never proven, of officers involved in the very crimes they were assigned to investigate. A chilling line from a 2018 report. In some communities, Indigenous women fear the police as much as the predators. The justice double standard. Compare two cases. A white girl disappears in a small town. An Indigenous girl disappears on the same road, same day. One becomes a national story. Search parties mobilize. Media floods in. The other? No headline. No search. Just silence. This is the justice system. Two lanes. One paved, the other broken gravel. Coroner's cruelty. In several cases, coroners ruled no foul play on bodies that were bruised, beaten, or found in suspicious places. One victim was found half-naked in a ditch. The ruling? Death by misadventure. No investigation. No autopsy follow-up. Case closed. What about accountability? The families asked, who's responsible? Who let these women slip through the cracks? Who will be punished? The answer? No one. Not one RCMP officer has faced charges for negligence in these cases. No resignations, no firings, no consequences, only apologies. Paper thin. Too late. The weight of injustice. Mothers now carry case files thicker than novels. Sisters become private investigators. Communities grow suspicious of everyone. The message again and again, you're on your own. Public hearings, private pain. During the national inquiry, families sat across from police officers, lawyers, politicians, and told their stories. Again, some officers cried. Some didn't blink. A few offered apologies, but none could undo the damage. Because this wasn't just about murder. It was about erasure, of memory, of humanity, of justice. The toll on families. One father, after 10 years of searching, said, "It's like screaming into a canyon. You pour your soul out, and all you hear is your own echo." Many families developed PTSD. Some turned to alcohol. Some became activists. Others withdrew entirely. A few have taken their own lives. Grief, weaponized by neglect, becomes a slow execution. Still they fight. Even now, families show up to hearings. They email cold case detectives. They call journalists. They hold vigils. They write the names of their daughters on protest signs that fade in the rain. Because the system may have failed, but they haven't. They are relentless, unbreakable. They are the voices the system tried to silence. And they are louder than ever. Final shot, a mother standing on the side of Highway 16. She's holding a framed photo. Her eyes are locked on the horizon, waiting, watching. The system may never be judged in court, but history will remember. And so will the women who walk this road. They weren't statistics. They weren't headlines. They were loved. They had dreams, laughter, futures, but the highway stole them. And now we remember them, not just as victims, but as people. Tamara Chipman. Tamara vanished in 2005. She was 22, a proud mother, a fisherwoman born of the coast, raised by the sea. Last seen hitchhiking east of Prince Rupert. No body was ever found. Her family still lights candles every September. She loved to dance, her cousin said. She'd take over the whole floor with just a smile. Ramona Wilson. Ramona was only 16. She was hitchhiking to a dance in 1994. She never arrived. Her body was found a year later in a wooded area outside Smithers. The trail where she was found, it's now called Ramona's Walk. Every year, her family and classmates walk it together, holding signs, carrying her picture, refusing to let her fade. Alberta Williams. Alberta disappeared in 1989. She was 24, warm, outgoing, fierce. She vanished after leaving a bar in Prince Rupert with friends. Her body was found weeks later, strangled, left near the Skeena River. Decades later, a retired Mountie would name a suspect. But justice never came. Her sister said, "I hear her laugh in my dreams. It's the only place she's safe now." Nicole Hoare. Nicole was an Indigenous. She was 25, a tree planter from Alberta. She vanished in 2002 while hitchhiking near Prince George. Her case drew national attention, and that's when the world started asking questions about the others. But Nicole's family insisted. She is one of many. Don't forget the others. Her disappearance helped spark the broader awareness of the Highway of Tears. But she still hasn't been found. Cecilia Nichol. Cecilia was just 15. She went missing in 1989, vanished while hitchhiking near Smithers. Her cousin Delphine also disappeared from the same region. Some believe their cases are connected. Others fear a network of predators. Cecilia's photo is faded now, but her story remains sharp in the hearts of those who loved her. Every name is a wound, every story a reminder. These women were more than victims. They were sisters, daughters, mothers, friends. They mattered, and they still do. Dozens more, and still counting. The official RCMP list includes 18 confirmed cases, but advocacy groups say the number is much higher. Some say 40, others 50. Some whisper Hundreds, because not all disappearances were logged, not all families felt safe enough to report them, and many women simply vanished, their names never reaching the news. The forgotten ones. There are women whose cases were barely investigated. No posters, no press, no one looking, like Delphine Nichol, or Bonnie Joseph, or Michelle Pine. Women whose stories never made the nightly news, whose families still wait 30 years later. Portraits of pain and power. Many families have created shrines in their homes, walls of missing posters, photos wrapped in rosaries, teddy bears on mantles, red ribbons tied to mirrors. It's not just grief, it's defiance. They're not forgotten in here, one mother said, pointing to her chest. They live with every beat of my heart. A song for the missing. In Indigenous tradition, music and storytelling are sacred. Many communities have written songs for the missing, chanted their names in ceremonies, painted murals, told their children. This is what happens when silence wins. One girl, just 10, said at a vigil, "I never met her, but I carry her name, and I'll never stop saying it." Montage of murals painted on long brick walls, red dresses fluttering in the wind, and candlelight ceremonies held at dusk. This is not just a documentary. This is a memorial. And these stories, they will not vanish. Not into the trees, not into the night, not down that highway. They remain. For years, the road has taken lives, dreams, peace. But now, communities are fighting to take something back. Safety, dignity, and finally, change. The road ahead isn't easy, but they're walking it, step by painful step. A simple demand, a bus. For decades, one request echoed louder than any other. Put a bus on the highway. Many of the victims vanished while hitchhiking because they had no choice. No buses, no taxis, no affordable transportation. Families begged over and over. And finally, after 40 years, someone listened. 2017, the BC transit expansion. In 2017, the province of British Columbia launched new public bus routes along parts of Highway 16. 5 communities connected, regular schedules, free rides for youth and low-income passengers. It wasn't perfect. Many gaps remained. But it was a start. A mother of a missing girl said, "If this had been here 10 years ago, my daughter might still be alive." The highway signs. New signs now stand along the highway. Bright yellow, unmissable. They read, "Girls don't hitchhike on the highway of tears." Some praised them. Others called them cruel. Why warn the girls, advocates asked, when you should be warning the predators? But for many, the signs were better than silence. Indigenous-led safety programs. Communities took matters into their own hands. Safe house networks were created, homes where women could go if stranded. Youth safety workshops trained girls on awareness and self-defense. Rideshare programs were organized by elders with pickup trucks. Local patrols drove stretches of road each night just to watch for trouble. These weren't government initiatives. They were survival strategies. Because when no one protects you, you protect yourselves. Technology joins the fight. Several Indigenous tech developers stepped in. Crowdsourced maps of known danger zones. Apps for women to check in while traveling. Digital alerts that notify family if someone goes off-grid for too long. One app, developed by a Cree programmer, lets women track their bus route in real time and sends their location to 3 emergency contacts every 15 minutes. Small tools, life-saving power, curriculum reform, teaching the truth. In 2020, some school districts in British Columbia introduced lessons on the Highway of Tears into high school classrooms. Students now learn the names of the victims, the history of the route, the systemic failures behind the disappearances. Young girls see their own faces in those stories and vow never to walk alone. Young boys hear the pain and are taught never to become the next predator. Media begins to listen. For decades, the media looked away. But that's changing. Documentaries, podcasts, true crime specials, investigative series. Outlets like the CBC, APTN, and independent filmmakers have shined a harsh spotlight on the highway of tears. And once the world saw, it couldn't unsee. One Indigenous journalist said, "They ignored us when we begged. But now, they're listening because it's profitable." Still, awareness is growing. And with it, pressure. Political shifts and promises. Governments at both the provincial and federal level have pledged more transportation funding, more Indigenous representation in policing, stronger missing persons protocols, a national task force to reopen cold cases. But families remain cautious. "We've heard promises before," one woman said. "We'll believe it when we see arrests." Still, change is happening, however slowly. Community healing projects. Indigenous communities along the highway have launched healing programs. Sweat lodges for grieving families. Art therapy for siblings of the missing. Story circles where trauma is shared and honored. Land ceremonies at sites where bodies were found. These aren't just rituals, they're resistance. They reclaim spaces once marked by horror and fill them with resilience. The Sisters in Spirit movement. Founded by Indigenous women, this movement has held thousands of vigils across Canada. Every October 4th, people gather in city squares, beside courthouses, on the highway shoulders themselves. They hold candles, they read names, they sing in Cree, Haida, Carrier, Gixin, and more. For every light that went out, they raise one back up. The fight is far from over. Despite these changes, cold cases remain unsolved. Killers remain free. The highway still claims lives, but today, women walk it with more support, more tools, more awareness, and more voices speaking their names. Final shot, dozens of red dresses hanging from trees, blowing gently in the wind. Below them, children run, free, unafraid. The road still haunts, but now, it also remembers. There's a question no one wants to ask, but everyone does. What if the monster never left? What if he's still here, waiting, watching, choosing his next victim? Because some stories never end. They just get quiet, a chilling pattern. For years, the disappearances followed a pattern. A girl or woman alone, hitchhiking, or walking home. Last seen near a rural pullout, or at a gas station, then gone without a trace. Sometimes a backpack was found, sometimes a shoe, sometimes nothing at all. And every time, it felt the same, deliberate, precise, predatory. One killer, or many? Investigators have debated this for decades. Is it the work of a serial killer, or a stretch of highway so isolated, so vulnerable that it attracts many predators? Some believe it's both. Truckers who pass through and vanish. Locals who know the terrain too well. Repeat offenders who prey on the forgotten. The darkness doesn't need just one face. It can wear many. Unconfirmed suspects. Over the years, names have surfaced. Some are chilling. One, Bobby Jack Fowler, an American drifter. Violent, convicted rapist. DNA linked him to one Highway of Tears case. Colleen McMillan, murdered in 1974. He died in prison in 2006. Authorities suspect he may be connected to several more disappearances, but no proof, only shadows. 2. Cody Leijbokoff, a young man from British Columbia, convicted of murdering 4 women in 2010. He was just 20 when caught. Police say his victims don't align with the Highway of Tears profile, but the question lingers. Did he act alone? Was he part of something bigger? The forest knows things. Locals whisper of areas along the highway where phones lose signal. Cars vanish, and silence grows unnaturally thick. Hunters, loggers, hikers, they all say the same thing. There are places in these woods where no one would ever find you. Predators know that, too. And if someone were hunting, this would be the perfect terrain. Unmarked graves. Some believe there are bodies we haven't found, buried deep in logging cuts, dumped into rivers, hidden in mining shafts, burned in remote fire pits. A First Nations elder said, "The earth here is holding secrets. It knows who's missing, and it knows who did it." But without evidence, without answers, justice stays buried. Cold case mysteries. Some of the most chilling disappearances still have no suspects. No leads. Bonnie Joseph disappeared in 2007, walking to a family gathering. Vanished mid-route. No trace. Ever. Aila Sarek Auger, just 14 years old. Last seen in Prince George in 2006. Her body was found beside the highway days later. Police ruled out foul play. Her family disagrees. Strongly. Delphine Nichol vanished in 1990. Her cousin Cecilia also went missing years later. Is it a coincidence? Or something more sinister? What locals believe. We asked people from Prince George, Smithers, Morristown, and beyond. Most of them gave the same answer. Someone is still out there. This wasn't just bad luck. It's too many, too similar, too precise. And then, quietly, we think we know who it is. But fear keeps lips sealed. Rural justice is delicate and dangerous. Do killers age out? Some criminologists argue that if the perpetrator was active in the 1980s and 90s, he'd be older now, slower, weaker, less likely to kill. But others warn. Predators evolve. They adapt. They change methods. They wait. And if there's more than one, the cycle may never have stopped. The killer could be watching this. Right now, wherever he is. He may hear his name whispered, see his crimes dissected, watch as his victims are remembered. But he hasn't been caught. Not yet. And that's what haunts the families the most. He may be a neighbor, a friend, a face at the grocery store, smiling, unassuming, deadly. What if he's still driving? Imagine this. You're standing on the shoulder of Highway 16. It's cold. You're late. A truck slows beside you. The door opens. A man leans out. He smiles. Need a lift? Do you get in? Would you? Footage of headlights disappearing into the fog. The camera lingers on an empty stretch of highway. Birds scatter from the treetops. This isn't just a mystery. It's a warning. And the road isn't finished with us yet. They say silence is powerful. But these dresses speak. They scream. They cry. They demand answers. Because these aren't decorations. They're reminders, memorials, monuments to grief and to strength. The Red Dress Project. It began as an art installation. Metis artist Jamie Black created the Redress Project in 2010. Her idea was simple but devastating. Hang hundreds of empty red dresses in public places. Let them tell the stories no one else would. She placed them in forests, universities, city streets, on the steps of government buildings. No words, no signs, just the dresses. And suddenly, everyone was paying attention. Why red? In many indigenous cultures, red is the only color spirits can see. It's the color of life, of blood, of power. By wearing red or displaying it, the missing are called home, acknowledged, seen. Every May 5th, across Canada and the U.S., women wear red for Milk Day. Missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls. It's a symbol now, not of weakness, but of resistance. From art to movement, the red dress didn't stay on trees. It marched in protests, draped across stages, showed up on runways, painted itself into murals, was stitched into beadwork, and tattooed onto skin. It became a rallying cry. She was wearing red, and now we all are. Faces behind the dresses. Each dress represents a woman, but also a family left behind, a mother with an empty bedroom, a sister clutching a photo, a child asking when mommy's coming home. Some carry signs with names: Tamara, Ramona, Alberta, Nicole, Bonnie, Delphine. Others simply carry the weight of memory. The women who refuse to be silent. Across the highway of tears, Indigenous women are rising. They're not just victims. They're leaders. They've organized search parties, safety patrols, healing circles, advocacy coalitions, national marches. Women like Gladys Roddick, who walked thousands of kilometers in memory of Ernest Tamara, or Brenda Wilson, who turned her sister Ramona's tragedy into decades of community outreach. These women carry grief on their backs and still stand taller than ever. Hashtag MMIWG, a hashtag that became a movement. Social media exploded with the hashtag MMIWG. Tweets turned into headlines. Posts became petitions. Videos lit up TikTok and Instagram with survivor stories and calls for justice. The silence that lasted for decades? It's gone. Now, the world is watching and listening. International attention. From the United Nations to Human Rights Watch, the world has taken notice. Reports have been written. Conferences held. Fundraising campaigns launched. Some celebrities have spoken up. Some governments have responded. But the women of Highway 16, they don't wait for help anymore. They make their own way forward. Music, poetry, and power. Artists have joined the fight. Singers record songs in tribute. Poets recite verses carved in sorrow. Painters fill galleries with haunting imagery. Filmmakers create documentaries like this one to reach the hearts that statistics can't. One poem read at a vigil echoed down the highway. Red is not just color. It is alarm. It is blood on snow. It is the scream the wind still carries. Honoring with action. Communities now organize red dress runs, 5 Burmese chots and walks in memory of the missing. Girls wear regalia at powwows stitched with red ribbons. Boys are taught never to stand silent in the face of violence. Teachers create red dress bulletin boards. Students write letters to the government. Elders host teachings around fires, sharing stories, prayers, warnings. The message is clear. We remember. We resist. We will not vanish quietly. Montage. Young girls tying red cloth around trees. Boys painting banners. A grandmother holding a photo to her chest, whispering something to the wind. These are not just displays. They are shields and swords. The red dress has become a force, not to mourn the dead, but to protect the living. It begins as just a road. Black asphalt, white lines, a path carved through silence. But this highway is more than concrete. It's a place of pain, of memory, of unanswered questions. And for many, the road still calls. One last look back. More than 80 women and girls. Gone. Most of them Indigenous. Many just teenagers. All of them loved. Some names are known. Others were never reported. Some families are still waiting, decades later, for a phone call, a clue, a body. This is not just a tragedy. It's an epidemic. Why this story matters. This isn't just about Canada, or Indigenous people, or women. It's about how a society treats its most vulnerable. How we fail, or rise. It's about racism, poverty, neglect, misogyny, colonialism, and the deadly silence that comes when the world decides some lives matter less. The Highway of Tears is a mirror, and we all have to look into it. Change is possible, but it's not guaranteed. The red dresses sway. Buses now drive parts of a route. The media reports more often. The names are finally being said out loud, but many cold cases remain unsolved. Many families are still grieving. The disappearances haven't completely stopped. Progress is not victory. It's just the beginning of a longer fight. What can be done? It's a question viewers often ask. What can I do? How do I help? Here's the truth. You listen. You learn. You speak. Share these stories. Say the victims' names. Support Indigenous-led initiatives. Demand real funding for cold case investigations. Push for more shelters, buses, and trauma-informed care. And if you live near a stretch of road like this, don't ignore it. For the families, it never ends. Mothers still walk the shoulders. Sisters still leave flowers by mile markers. Fathers still keep porch lights on decades later. And for many of them, healing isn't a finish line. It's the ability to keep breathing despite the pain. They don't want your pity. They want justice. They want change. They want their daughters to come home. Hope along the highway. But not everything is sorrow. Out of this tragedy has come power. Young girls growing up with pride in their culture. Youth advocates who refuse to let this happen again. Artists who use brushstrokes and songs to scream when words fail. Communities that once feared the highway now reclaiming it. From pain comes fire. From silence comes voice. Montage. A bus driving past red dresses. A girl holding her grandmother's hand as they walk along the roadside. A police officer kneeling next to a memorial, leaving flowers. They tried to vanish, but we remember. They tried to silence, but we speak louder. They tried to erase, but now we document. We film. We post. We fight, because the road is still watching. It stretches into the future, just as it stretches behind us. Still dangerous, still wild, still real. But now it's not quiet anymore. Every red dress shouts a name. Every bus carries resistance. Every girl walking that road knows she is not alone. Final words. To those who disappeared, we see you. We remember you. We will not stop searching. To those watching, don't turn away. Don't forget. Don't let the highway of tears claim another soul in silence. Because somewhere out there, the next chapter is already being written. Let's make sure it ends differently. Final shot. A new red dress is hung on a tree. The wind catches it. It dances softly, defiantly as traffic rushes past. Fade to black. This is the story of the Highway of Tears, a place where the road remembers everything. If this story moved you, share it. Let their names be known. Support Indigenous communities. And never stop asking, who is preying on women along this road? Until the last case is solved. Until the last dress is taken down. Until no girl is ever left behind again. This has been Unsolved Crime Stories. Subscribe, follow, and help keep the spotlight where it belongs. On the truth